Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so Genesis 30. When Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children. Now Leah, the first daughter that Laban gave Jacob, was the one that he didn't want, but he wound up with her. She had like 5 kids or 6 kids. I think 5 boys, or I don't know how many now. I think it was about 5. But anyway, now Rachel had not had any children. So this is the daughter, or this is the wife that he just loved so much. When Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister and said to Jacob, "Give me children or else I will die." And Jacob became very angry with Rachel. Now that's how a husband would be, because he can't do anything about it. And he said, "Am I in God's stead? Who has denied you children?" Now I'm reading from the Amplified just to let you know so you can follow along with me. And he said, "See here, take my maid Leah and have intercourse with her. And when the baby comes, she will deliver it upon my knee, that I by her may also have children." And she gave him Leah, her maid, as a secondary wife, and Jacob had intercourse with her. Now this is what Isaac, I know Sarah did this too. And Leah became pregnant and bore Jacob a son. And Rachel said, "God has judged and vindicated me and has heard my plea and has given me a son." So she named him Dan, which means judged. And Leah, Rachel's maid, conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, "With mighty wrestling in prayer to God, I have struggled with my sister and have prevailed." So she named him the second son, Bilhah. Bilhah bore Naphtali, which means struggled. When Leah saw that she had ceased to bear, when she ceased to bear, she stopped having children, but she had like 5 already. She gave Zilpah, her maid, to Jacob as a secondary wife, and Zilpah, Leah's maid, bore Jacob a son. This is the older daughter, the wife. Then Leah said, "Victory and good fortune have come," and she named him Gad, which means fortune. Zilpah, Leah's maid, bore Jacob a second son, and Leah said, "I am happy, for women will call me blessed, happy, fortunate, to be envied," and she named him Asher, meaning happy. Now Reuben went at the time of wheat harvest and found some mandrakes, love apples, in the field, and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Give me, I pray you, some of your son's mandrakes." But Leah answered, "Is it not enough that you have taken my husband without your taking away my son's mandrakes also?" Now, Leah is not the one that Jacob actually chose. Jacob chose Rachel, not Leah. But Laban, the father-in-law, wanted the oldest daughter to also be married. So he gave her secretly with the veil so that he would have Leah first, and he promised he'd work 7 years, and then he wound up getting Rachel a couple weeks later, but he had to work another 7 years for that. So meanwhile, Leah is saying, "Well, isn't it bad enough that you've taken my husband?" Well, it wasn't her fault that Jacob actually just loved Rachel more. That's who he wanted to marry, but she was competing with her sister, as her sister was competing with her too, because she hadn't had any children. But they're both using their servant girls to be with Jacob so they can have children. And this is how the generation, it's just like in Ecclesiastes, it says, what has happened under the sun is not new. It goes around and around. It might look different, but it's always going to be where the same thing. Well, you see in each generation, Sarah did that, and I don't know if Isaac's wife did that. But each one, they did something where they were trying to put their hands to it. And so anyway, but Leah answered, "Is it not enough that you have taken my husband without you taking my son's mandrakes also?" And Rachel said, "Jacob shall sleep with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes." And Jacob came out at the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must sleep with me tonight, for I have certainly paid you hire with my son's mandrakes." So he slept with her that night. And God heeded Leah's prayer, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. There it was. That was the fifth son. And this was because Rachel put her up to it because she wanted mandrakes from the son, from Leah's son. This is how women put their hands to it, and they should just leave it alone. Leah said, "God has given me my hire because I have given my maid to my husband." And she called his name Ishgar, meaning hired. And Leah became pregnant again and bore Jacob a sixth son. Then Leah said, "God has endowed me with a good marriage gift. For my husband now will he dwell with me and regard me as his wife in reality, because I have borne him six sons." And she named him Zebulun, meaning dwelling. Now her maid had two sons also with them because they were competing. Afterwards, she bore a daughter and called her Dinah. So she had six sons and a daughter with Jacob, and two sons with her maid. Her maid had it with Jacob, had children. Then God remembered Rachel and answered her pleading. Finally, Rachel is going to have her own child now. Then God remembered Rachel and answered her pleading and made it possible for her to have children. And now for the first time she became pregnant and bore a son. And she said, "God has taken away my reproach, my disgrace, and my humiliation." And she called his name Joseph. That's where Joseph comes in now. May he add is what Joseph means. And she said, "May the Lord add to me another son." And she also had two sons with the servant. She told her servant also to go to Jacob and had two sons. When Rachel had borne Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away that I may go to my own place and country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, and let me go, for you know the work that I have done for you." Now Jacob is talking to Laban. And Laban, the father-in-law, said to him, "If I found favor in your sight, I pray, do not go. For I have learned by experience and from the omens." Now this was his down part. This was part of his downfall. "And from the omens in divination, that the Lord has favored me with blessings on your account." He's putting his hope in a fake God, a false God. He said, "State your salary and I will give it." Now Laban is continually deceiving Jacob. First, he deceived him with the wife, giving him the first daughter instead of the one that he wanted first. So he wound up with both. Now he's asking, he's saying, "No, stay here and I will give you a bigger salary." Jacob answered him, "You know how I have served you and how your possessions, your cattle and sheep and goats have fared with me." He wound up staying 20 years because he took care of his cattle and his animals for 6 of those years. "For you had little before I came," Jacob said, and you have increased and multiplied abundantly. And the Lord has favored you with blessings wherever I turned. But now, when shall I provide for my own house also?" See, he was asking, "I would like to go to whip for my own house." He was doing this for his father-in-law. He listened to his mom and dad, went to the brother's family, found a wife. Then Laban, all this time, he's been deceiving him. He's wanting him to work for him. Now he's still saying, "I want you to stay." He says, and you've been blessed, you've been prosperous because I've been here." Because Jacob was a man of God, and he trusted and believed in God, our Father, the Trinity. Laban said, "What shall I give you?" And Jacob said, "You shall not give me anything, if will do this one thing for me, of which I am about to tell you, and I will again feed and take care of your flock. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted animal, every black one among the sheep, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and such shall be my wages. So later, when the matter of my wages is brought before you, my fair dealings will be evident and answer for me. Every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and black among the sheep, if found with me, shall be counted as stolen. And Laban said, good, let it be done as you say. But that same day, Laban got wisdom from the Lord. He removed the he-goats that were streaked and spotted, and all the she-goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had white on it, and every black lamb, and put them in charge of his sons. And he set a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob was then left to care for the rest of Laban's flock. But Jacob took fresh rods of poplar and almond and plane trees, and peeled white streaks in them, exposing the white in the rods. Very smart. Then he set the rods which he had peeled in front of the flocks in the watering troughs where the flocks came to drink. And since they bred and conceived when they came to drink, the flocks bred and conceived in sight of the rods, and brought forth lambs and kids, streaked, speckled, and spotted, because that's what they saw while they were breeding. Jacob separated the lambs as he had done with the peeled rods. He also set the faces of the flocks toward the streaked, and all dark in the new flock, and all the dark in the new flock of Laban. He put his own droves by themselves and did not let them breed with Laban's flock. And whenever the stronger animals were breeding, Jacob laid the rods in the watering troughs before their eyes of the flock, that they might breed and conceive among the rods. But when the sheep and goats were feeble, he omitted putting the rods there. So the feebler animals were Laban's, and the stronger were Jacob's. Thus the man increased and became exceedingly rich, and had many sheep and goats and maidservants and menservants, camels and donkeys. He had the wisdom of the Lord in how to make this, in how to get prosperous and be prosperous. And God blessed him. Now, that's God giving wisdom. Some people might say, oh, well, that wasn't right. No, look at what all that Laban has done. Now God is giving wisdom to Jacob to know how to do something to prosper. Now Jacob heard Laban's sons complaining, chapter 31. Jacob heard Laban's sons complaining. Jacob has taken away all that was our father's. He has acquired all this wealth and honor from what belonged to our father. And Jacob noticed that Laban looked at him less favorably than before. So this is number 2. He looked at him less favorably than he did before. He started to have animosity. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your people, and I will be with you. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field to his flock. And he said to them, I see how your father looks at me, that he is not friendly toward me as before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my might and power, but your father has deceived me and changed my wages 10 times, but God did not allow him to hurt me. So see, number 1, he explained to the wives what had happened, but he also didn't hold it against him. He said, at least he was not able to hurt me. God didn't let him hurt me. So he knew he was in God's protection all this time. If he said the speckled shall be your wages, then all the flocks bore speckled. And if he said the streaked shall be your hire, then all the flock bore streaked. Thus God has taken away the flocks of your father and given them to me. God did this. He gave me favor. And I had a dream at the time the flocks conceived. I looked up and saw that the rams which mated with the she-goats were streaked, speckled, and spotted. And the angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob. And he said, here am I. And he said, look up and see all the rams which mate with the flock are streaked, speckled, and molted. for I have seen all that Laban does to you. See, God sees what's going on. If you know that there's unfairness, you keep it with God. You keep it quiet with God. God sees and God will vindicate. But if you stay quiet and don't get unforgiveness, don't allow bitterness, don't let a root of bitterness come in, but stay quiet before the Lord, knowing God, trusting God sees and he will vindicate. He said, I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed the pillar and where you vowed a vow to me. Now arise, get out from the land. Now see, God said, I see that everything Laban's been doing to you. Now arise, get out from this land and return to your native land, back to where his father was from. And Rachel and Leah answered him, is there any portion of inheritance for us in our father's house? Are we not counted by him as strangers? For he sold us and has also quite devoured our money, the price you paid for us. So they're recognizing that Jacob paid for them, but that Laban, the father, took everything. So for all the riches which God has taken from our father are ours and our children's. Now then, whatever God has said to you, do it. So they agreed with him to go. But he brought it to his wives to confirm it. For then Jacob rose up and set his sons and his wives upon the camels, and he drove away. He rose up, set the sons and his wives upon the camels, and drove away. All his livestock and all his gain which he had gotten, the livestock he had obtained and accumulated in Padan Aram, to go to Isaac his father in the land of Canaan. Now Laban had gone to shear his sheep, possibly to the feast of sheep shearing, and Rachel stole her father's household gods. Now that was something Rachel shouldn't have done, because she was like, I should get whatever I want now because he stole from my husband. So she goes and gets a god from the house, from her father's house. And Jacob outwitted Laban. Jacob outwitted Laban the Syrian, Aramean, in that he did not tell him that he intended to go, to flee, and slip away secretly. He didn't want to tell him, because every time he would tell him, he would say, no, I want you to stay. And remember, he had an animosity now, because he knew how to, he had the possessions, all the cattle wound up being, the strong cattle wound up being his, because Laban's sons actually showed him that, So he fled with all that he had and arose and crossed the river Euphrates and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. So he did what God said. He got up and went. But on the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. So he took his kinsmen with him and pursued after Jacob for 7 days. And they overtook him in the hill country of Gilead. But God said to Laban the Syrian, Aramean, in a dream by night, and said to him, be careful that you do not speak from good to bad to Jacob, peaceably, then violently. So God basically told Laban, the Aramean, where he's Arabic, but he spoke to this Arabic man, this Laban, this father-in-law, in a dream. Be careful that you don't speak from good to bad, like peace to violence. Then Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent on the hill, and Laban, coming with his kinsmen, pitched his tents on the same hill of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, what do you mean, stealing away and leaving like this, without my knowing it, and carrying off my daughters as if captive of the world? Why did you flee secretly and cheat me and not tell me, so that I might have sent you away with joy and gladness and with singing and with tambourine and lyre? So Laban's saying all this stuff, but yet he's the one who's cheated Jacob all these years. And why did you not permit me to kiss my sons and grandchildren and my daughters goodbye? Now you have done foolishly in behaving like this. It is in my power to do you harm. But the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, be careful that you don't speak from good to bad to Jacob, like peacefully to violently. And now you felt you must go because you were homesick for your father's house. But why did you steal my household gods?" And he wasn't homesick. God told him to go back to his family. Jacob answered Laban, "Because I was afraid, for I thought, suppose you would take your daughters from me by force," which is understandable. I would think that too. "The one with whom," and plus God didn't tell him to wait. He just said, "Go, arise and go." "Then the one with whom you find those gods of yours, let him not live." So he said, whoever you find that the gods of yours, let him not live. And guess what? Rachel was the one that took them. But watch what happens. "The one with whom you find the gods, let him not live. Here, before our kinsmen, search my possessions and take whatever you find that belongs to you." For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the images. Jacob didn't know. And he was pure in his heart. He just fled and did what God told him. So Laban went into Jacob's tent, into Leah's tent, and the tent of the two maids, but he didn't find them. Then he went from Leah's tent into Rachel's tent. But Rachel had taken the images and put them in the camel's saddle and sat on them. Laban searched and felt through all the tent, but did not find them. And Rachel said to her father, "Do not be displeased, my lord, that I cannot rise up before you. For the period of woman is upon me, and I am unwell." And he searched, but did not find the gods. She sat there saying she had her period. Then Jacob became angry and reproached and argued with Laban. Because Jacob said, "Well, you didn't find anything. And I know that nothing was taken." He knew nothing was taken, but he didn't know Rachel. And Jacob said to Laban, "What is my fault? What is my sin that you so hotly pursue me when I'm in right standing with you? Although you have searched and felt through all my household possessions, what have you found of all the household goods? Put it here before my brethren and yours, that they may judge and decide between us." See, he had nothing to hide. "These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your she-goats have not lost their young, and the rams of your flock have not been eaten by me. I did not bring you the carcasses of animals torn by wild beasts. I bore the loss of it. You required of me to make good all that was stolen, whether it occurred by day or night. This was my lot. By day, the heat consumed me, and by night, the cold, I could not sleep. I have been 20 years in your house. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flocks, and you've changed my wages 10 times. Now he's coming out to let him know. And if the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the dread lest he should fall, and fear lest he offend, of Isaac, had not been with me, surely you would have sent me away now empty-handed, if my God didn't protect me, and if the fear of God didn't fall on you. God has seen my affliction and humiliation and the wearying labor of my hands and rebuked you last night." My God rebuked you last night. He saw what was in my heart, and he saw how I've worked hard. Laban answered Jacob, "These daughters are my daughters. These children are my children. These flocks are my flock, and all that you see is mine. But what can I do today to my daughters or to their children whom you have borne? So come now, let us make a covenant or a league, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me." So Jacob set up a stone for a pillar or a monument. And Jacob said to his brethren, "Gather stones." And they took stones and made a heap, and they ate together there upon the heap. Laban called it Jagar Shadutha, witness heap in Aramaic, but Jacob called it Gilead, witness heap in Hebrew. Laban said, "This heap is a witness today between you and me." Therefore it was named Galeed. And the pillar or monument was called Mizpah, watchpost. For he, Laban, said, "May the Lord watch between you and me when we are absent and hidden from one another. If you should afflict, humiliate, or lower, divorce my daughters, or if you should take other wives beside my daughters, although no man is with us to witness, see God is witness between you and me. So Laban said to Jacob, see this heap and this pillar which I have set up between you and me? This heap is a witness, and this pillar is a witness that I will not pass by this heap to you, and that you will not pass by this heap and this pillar to me or for harm. And the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God, the object of worship of their father Terah, an idolater, judge between us. But Jacob swore only by the one true God, the dread and fear of his father Isaac. See, Laban was scared. He was fearful. Well, he's the one who made this monument because he didn't want him to come after him, because he was afraid if he was afraid. And that's what it is. When you look to other gods, you walk in fear, and your choices are fear-based. But Jacob had no ugly conscience. He had no evil conscience. He knew he was right before the Lord, and he swore only to the true God and said, yes, I only swear unto the true God. I swear between us with my true. He swore only by the one true God, the dread and fear of his father Isaac. Laban actually had the other gods, the God of Nahor and Terah, an idolater and an object of worship. Then Jacob offered a sacrifice on the mountain and called his brethren to eat food. And they ate food and lingered all night on the mountaintop. And early in the morning, Laban rose up and kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and pronounced a blessing, asking God's favor on them. Then Laban departed and returned to his home. Wow, what a thing to happen all this time. God bless Jacob for dealing with a father-in-law like that. And still, even to this day, even to that night, he sat there for the whole night, lingering all night on the mountain. They ate food, they lingered, and finally Laban kissed and said goodbye. Finally. It was like God, but look at the timing and look at the pureness and the heart of Jacob and the righteous heart and the one true God he only believed and trusted in and put his faith and hope in. And he never ever had a word of evil or an evil heart against Laban, even though there was many reason to. He just didn't. He trusted God, and look at the timing. Everything happened in the timing. God vindicated him. And that's what I want to leave with you tonight. And I want to bless you and say, Lord, help us, Father, to trust you and lean only unto our only one God, only true God is you, Lord Jesus Christ, Lord of glory, King of all, Elohim, Adonai, you are the one true God of Israel, Jesus, and the government will be upon his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Almighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, and of the government he will reign. So God is our first choice. In our government, we look to him, we choose him, we trust him, we've prayed, we've left it in his hands. We know he's going to vindicate in his time. In your situation, he's going to vindicate. Keep your focus on the Lord. Keep your heart clean, just like Jacob. And be blessed today, and I'll see you tomorrow on Porch in It. Thank you for coming, and remember, your words are your way to victory.